Hi, everybody. I'm Lizzie Simon. I'm so sorry I couldn't be with you tonight, but I want to thank each and every one of you for your generosity and for your presence in Kira and Mark's life. Their foundation, Hearts in Harmony, is incredible and it's so important. And I'm so glad they're putting all of their energy and community behind supporting Michael Ackerman's work for kids with long QT. I'm a writer and I have a little piece that I'm going to read for you. It's short, don't worry. And it's about the role of medicine and technology in our lives. Our daughter, Shirley, has long QT syndrome. It's called One Night at a Time. For the first 2.5 years of my youngest daughter's life, she slept on a monitor beneath her crib mattress designed to detect micro movements and to sound an alarm if she went into cardiac arrest while sleeping. She has a rare condition called long QT type 15, in which the interval between her heartbeats goes on for too long. So from the day she was born, we had to be around the clock ready to revive her. Her first electrophysiologist, Dr. Love, that was his real name, recommended the monitor. The plan was that if in the middle of the night the alarm went off, I would take the portable defibrillator that I kept by her crib, and I would strip her and stick the pads on her front and back and press the button to shock her. That prospect and the fact of her needing, like any baby, to eat every few hours throughout the night warped the time between the sun setting and rising. How do any of you live with this? I asked a social media group for the parents of kids with long QT. We just do, they said, sharing pictures of their children at ballet recitals and graduations. And you will too. Soon I found my rhythm with the monitor, clicking it on when I placed her in the crib and clicking it off when I took her out of the crib. Dr. Love was very upbeat, even when saying dreadful things, and I thought of him as Happy Clown, in part because his comportment was so different from Dr. Rajesh Shenoy, my daughter's cardiologist, a kind-hearted and somewhat mournful person who in my head I named Sad Clown. In the 5 weeks she was in the NICU following a heart surgery at 7 hours old to install a pacemaker, they would appear out of nowhere to discuss something complicated and concerning. They were such excellent doctors trying to impart such difficult news, and I would cope and maybe rebel privately by making up dumb little jokes. I couldn't quite reckon dead on with what was happening and what it meant. I remember Dr. Love explaining that an electrophysiologist was kind of like a plumber and electrician, whereas a heart failure doctor specializes in cardiomyopathy and transplant. I asked him what heart failure doctors were called, and he said they're called heart failure doctors. And I started pitching him better, more positive names until he pulled us back to our excruciating topic, which was my daughter's medical fragility and what would be expected of me to ensure her survival. We were first tipped off that my daughter has a heart condition when I was about 6 months pregnant, and my OBGYN heard a slow in utero heartbeat. It was so slow, she assumed her machine was malfunctioning. So we switched to a different machine, but it wasn't malfunctioning. You're going to need to go to the hospital, she said, and I assumed she meant at some point in the near future. No, she said, right now. I thought, this is a bit much. There goes my afternoon. At the hospital, they hooked me up to a bunch of different machines, and the OBGYN there said he would deliver the baby that day if he could. I thought he was overreacting too. And then I went home with instructions to see other specialists, and I went home to people, my husband, my mother, my father, who assumed the doctors were overreacting too. We felt that pregnancies were over-monitored, that American healthcare was increasingly influenced by doctors fearing malpractice suits. We didn't think something's very wrong with the baby. We didn't see what was coming. The next week, I saw Sad Clown for the first time. He was so lovely and kind, and I assumed he was a guy walking through his life concerned and a little blue. I did not think something's very wrong with the baby, and he feels badly about that. I did not think he sees what's coming. I never had to defibrillate my daughter, not in the daytime, not in the middle of the night. When she was 2.5, she had a surgery to implant an internal defibrillator, an ICD, which would shock her if she went into cardiac arrest, and we checked the crib monitor. The ICD is set to alarm after a shock has been administered in case parents are in another room. This is something a doctor must have told me when my daughter was in post-op, but I was probably too busy nicknaming him to have the info really register. My daughter calls the ICD her power pack. One night when she was 4, after we'd been out seeing an Ethiopian circus, my daughter went into cardiac arrest on the sidewalk in the dark in the rain. One second she was racing her older sister to our building, and then in the next, she was crumpled on the ground at the foot of an elderly woman who was screaming, "Help." By the time I reached her, by the time I picked her up, the ICD had already shocked her. She was holding her chest, in some pain, but more so confused and disorientated. "Owie," she wailed. My husband and I chose not to respond to the elderly lady who was wagging her finger, admonishing us for letting our kids run wildly in the streets. We went home and left a message for the electrophysiologist. We told our older daughter that her sister had fainted. Waiting on the couch, our youngest watched YouTube videos and gradually regained her equilibrium, while my husband and I debated a bit about what had just happened. My defense mechanism jousting with his defense mechanisms, jousting in a muted way, of course, so that our kids would remain unfazed. And this went on for a minute or two until my youngest interrupted. "What's that noise?" she said. I had assumed she was watching a YouTube video with a European ambulance in it. You know, wee you, wee you, wee you. But when I turned her tablet off, the alarm continued from inside of her chest. It's got to be one of the strangest, eeriest things I've ever witnessed. "It's okay," I said. "It's just your power pack letting us know it did its job." When her doc called, he told us he wasn't able to turn the alarm off remotely, so it would go off every 6 to 10 or 10 hours. He couldn't remember until we could get her to his office to turn it off. It went off every 3 hours, I remember. She slept next to me that night, and the alarm rang for a minute or so at 11 p.m., 2 a.m., and 5 a.m. She slept through it. I did not. Wee you, wee you, wee you, from the little body breathing next to mine, sleeping in the position of a chicken roast. Sudden unexpected death is a symptom of long QT, a symptom. So mine is a child whose entire life has been made possible by modern medicine and technology. From the ultrasound that first detected a slow heartbeat, to the pacemaker, the defibrillator, the ICD, the 3 medicines she takes daily, the echocardiograms, EKGs, and heart monitors that affix to her chest like big stickers. These contemporary technologies together have created a level of safety that allows her to be out of a medical setting and in the stream of a typical child, attending public schools in New York City and camps and joining gardening clubs and traveling with her family. I'll never forget sending her into school in the morning after her cardiac arrest, seeing her unbothered by having briefly died the night before, letting her amazing pre-K teacher know what had happened and that an alarm might go off from inside of her body, feeling relief when the doc turned the alarm off. Do I worry about what might happen in the night, each and every night before I go to bed? I do not. Not having to click the crib monitor on and off aids in the healthy forgetting I do between cardiac crises. The generalized hum of danger in my consciousness is quieter now. My daughter is 6. Those long QT parents in the social media group, they were right. I live with it. I just do. My sleep on most nights is sound. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great night.